Welcome to the My Warped Life podcast, episode number 4. I'm sitting here with my friend Tony. Aratia.
I'm here.
And how are you, Tony?
I'm fabulous.
You're just very formal today. What's going on?
Look, man, you know what? This Zoom life that everybody's experiencing, I think it's important to look fantastic in the Zoom call.
Okay,
I'm just saying.
I'll start to take notes on that.
I had a lot of meetings today.
But I'm before we get started today, it would be really helpful if people would review us on the podcast, on Apple Podcast. We need reviews so we can start moving up the food chain, I guess they call it, or something, if that's what it's called, you know? So if you get a chance and give us a little review, we'd appreciate it. Any feedback, follow us on Patreon. And today's episode, Tony, is pretty cool. You know, you've heard me talk a lot about Vans, but Vans is a shoe, right? Vans is a shoe. But behind that shoe, there's one of the most amazing families that I've ever come across.
Yeah, I've had the pleasure of actually at one of the tournaments meeting. It's really cool.
Meeting Steve Van Doren. But not only do we have Steve Van Doren on this episode, we have Kristy Van Doren, his daughter, and we have Paul Van Doren, the co-founder and original person from Vans. And we'll be talking about his upcoming book, Authentic Paul Van Doren. We'll be talking about the upcoming book that's coming out about his life. And we've got Bob Provost coming in, who's worked with Steve for a while, who's been lucky enough to work for many years. And their model it was interesting. They started to make these shoes, and they decided not to go like into a mall or anything. They started standalone shoe stores. Before, you would put your model would go in with a bunch of other shoes.
Right,
you know, when you would go in a department store,
right.
You know, Penny's or Kmart back then, or whatever we had back in the 60s. But they actually took freestanding buildings and made them Van stores.
Right.
And that's been a big model of theirs. So when you're out there right now and you see that Van store, this goes all the way back to 1966.
I didn't know that.
Well, just the very first year when he left school after 9th grade, he went to the pool hall and he was betting on horses. But then my grandmother got him a job down at the shoe factory, sweeping the floors. And so he started there and worked there for 20 years. And then they had a factory they acquired in Garden Grove. So my dad moved in 1963 for 6 months without our family out here to try to get this factory from losing $6 or $8 million a year back in those days to making it profitable. And then our family came out in 64, and my dad left there the end of 64, beginning of 65. He quit an integrity thing. And all of a sudden, he's got a brand new house in Costa Mesa, 5 kids, 35 years old, and no job. And it didn't take more than the next day a phone call from a friend that he had met and was working with out of Japan. His name was Serge Delia. And Serge called the factory up and said, "Hey, Paul, they said you weren't there." He says, "No, I quit." He says, "Do you have an idea?" And my dad says, "Yep." So Serge sent him a ticket to fly over to Kobe, Japan. And then they talked about the idea of, he always made shoes, but they never sold them. He says, "I want to make my own factory and sell them in my own stores, and I have control." And, in his book, it goes into different things like that and talks about those days. And that's how Vans began. It took him a year for Jimmy Gordy and my dad, 3 partners. Serge was a silent partner that put the money up at first. And the other 3 gentlemen were the ones that built the factory themselves and then opened the stores up and, began our run in 1966.
And that first factory was down in Orange, if I remember.
No, It was actually Broadway, 704 East Broadway, about a mile from Disneyland.
Oh, okay.
And the early 80s is when we moved to Batavia in Orange.
Okay.
Because that building, the roof burned. We had to make a quick move. There was 14 acres with 2 big buildings on them. We moved all the machinery over there so we could start making. In 3 days, all the machinery was moved over, and we never gave up. They said it couldn't be done, as we made shirts up, kind of like something on the Warped Tour we would do, is put up some shirts. They said it couldn't be done. 3 days, production was going again, because we, again, had a business that we had going at, probably $40 or $50 million in those. I remember hearing my dad in the early days, nobody knew who Vans was. And he told Serge, his money partner, I'm gonna need $15,000 because I want to go buy Mattel toys. It was the second year the company was in business, like 1967, 68. And we're going to sell them in the store. And Serge says, okay, great. And my dad It was, let's say, Barbie. It was Drowsy. It was Major Matt Mason. It was, all these. And my dad, if he bought it for $2.12, he sold it for $2.12. And Serge goes, "You can't do that, Paul. You got to charge $5." Nope. I'm not in the toy business. I'm in the shoe business. I want to get people into my stores, which he had shoes up, Mattel toys, $1.60, $2.12, and it brought people into the stores. So they all of a sudden bought the toys, but they finally learned about the brand.
So Tony, it's really interesting, before there are any businesses and there's the legacy and the story of Steve Van Doren, there's a really cool story about his dad instilling the work ethic in him.
In his book, you'll read a story about it when he bought a new car, okay, every couple of years. All five of us washed that car every day for at least 3 months. He'd come home, pull up, everybody runs out. He's got the hose, he washes it down, they got the bucket with the suds, and then I had back trunk, left fender, and bumper. And everybody, my sister Cheryl was the youngest, she had the wheels. Everybody had their spot. And if you didn't do it right, if you're going to put streaks or you missed the spot, he washed it down again. So we did it right the first time. We all did it together. It only took 5 minutes. Like my dad says, it's a bonus of having 5 kids. And he got a clean car every day.
My first exposure really to vans growing up in Southern California was the LA County Fair. I don't know if you've ever been out there, Tony.
Of course, yeah, but yours is LA County. Mine was Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I mean, that was my first exposure.
Everyone has a moment and an exposure to vans. But for me, my mom took us to the fair because they would have a tent at the fair, and I think it was 2 pairs for $10.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
And they were all there. Steve will talk about it. Let's hear what Steve has to say about that.
Well, what happened was we had socks there. Again, we were selling off, if you think of today at the outlet centers, we were selling off our discontinued shoes, seconds, shoes that got burned. And what happens, we'd have socks, and the socks cost us 50 cents, so we sold them for $1. But if it was kind of getting light inside of the booth, I'd get the megaphone out and I'd say, for the next 5 minutes, we're going to have a sock sale, 50 cents a pair. And if you can imagine people running, just like a mosh pit, to the sock racks, okay, and just attacking them. They don't need them, but it was too good to be true. So they did that. And all of a sudden, they bought a couple pair of shoes.
Now, I didn't realize that's how they started. Now, I still go to the LA County Fair every year. And those big halls where people are hawking their wares. So there's somebody selling a pot. Is that where they were?
No, they had their own tent.
Okay.
And when Steve brought this up under this discussion, he talked about seconds, like it was their seconds. So I always thought I had 2 left feet, It was like, different color shoes. That was cool. Whatever they could put in the box was yours, 2 for $10. But, it was something we really looked forward to, like getting our back to school shoes.
Right,
and it wasn't, they had started out as standalone retail stores throughout Orange County. They were actually a shoe company that made their shoes in California for the longest time. And while we were on the subject of like socks, because that was Steve's thing to bring people in, he's always known how to bring people in. He did it out on the Warped Tour too. He would sell like a hat and a t-shirt for $10. And some days he'd throw in a wristband and drive people constantly to their booths. But, Kristy brought up a really kind of cool story about socks.
It was so popular that people had to get tickets or tokens to actually come into the booth. And literally, shoes were cheap. They were a guy section, a girl section, a boy section, a kid section. And I would be fixing all the boxes to make sure they're nice and straight. And so people can read the labels. And I would try to talk to them and they just see this young kid. So my dad would give me a stick that you measure your feet with. And I'd go up to him and go, okay, the women's are over there and the guys are over there and the boys are over here. If you need anything, let me know. And here they are looking at this like little girl, like, how do you know all this? And, so I'd help in that sense. And then I would go in the back and say, okay, it's sock time. And literally being like 10 or 11 and carrying a basket of socks and filling it up. And then dad gets on the speaker and it's like 50-cent sock sale. And everybody starts running to the socks and I just throw them up and not even know what to do and just move and then clean up the mess afterwards. And I actually loved hanging out with my mom when she wouldn't be her. My uncle would be doing the register. So I like bagging the shoes as well. So that's one thing I wish that we still had so I could ingrain it with my son. Cause I don't know how you did it when the girls were 16, but my dad taught me like, whatever you have when you're 16, I'll match it to get you a car. And little did he know that I saved up all that money. So I had $7,000 and, like doing fairs and working I actually worked at a store when I was 13, talk about labor laws back in the 80s. Every Sunday, my dad dropped me off to Mary Kuklowski. And I'd work in the little Norco store. So I've grown up working working weekends.
Okay, Dad. So I've saved up $35,000. Match
exactly. I made that. I made that same mistake with one of my daughters, also. And by hustling, by her selling programs out on the Warped Tour and schedules, she ended up accumulating quite of her own money, and she brought me on her birthday how much money she made.
Well, I tell you, the idea of she was 10, 11 when they did that, and she got mobbed. Everyone sucks.
Oh, yeah. So she was well ready when they would mob the booth out on Warped Tour, when her dad would bring her out on the road.
And she was on the road a lot, right?
She was on the road, but one of the ways that Kristy started out was, at the fair was like the training ground for her. But then they didn't really have big budgets, and they were going up against big companies.
Sure.
And I think this next clip is really interesting, how they went to some of these events that maybe the big companies were in and how they were able to underground marketing.
We've been in action sports since the beginning, like of the 60s, and they had offered it to Nike. And let me tell you, Dad was pissed. Like, at least offer it to him so he could say no, because it was a lot of money. So he got a motorhome and filled it with all the promo that he could. And me and him took off, and we drove across the country. And I learned about guerrilla warfare at a very young age. And literally we got to Rhode Island, and we would go up and down streets and throw out Frisbees and water bottles and T-shirts, to the point where we're getting pulled over. And I'm like, Dad, you're going to get a ticket. And the officer's like, can I get some shirts for the guys? So my dad never got a ticket. And little did these people know, Dad thought it was great. We grab a backpack and go into the village, and all Nike knew was it was a guy and his daughter. And I'd be on the sidelines passing shirts down saying, put it on, put it on, put it on. And as they're filming skateboarding, everybody had band shirts along the line. And even the cameras had band stickers. We guerrilla warfare, and it was awesome.
Dude, they were cold-blooded. They went to a Nike event and handed out Vans T-shirts.
It literally didn't end there. And we'll talk about how our relationship started. Me and Steve reconnected. And so it's kind of a unique story because, in 1995, we went out with the Warped Tour as the Warped Tour. We've talked about the name Warped coming from Warped magazine. But at that point, I had started to realize that somehow I was going to need to get some funding to help make this happen. And it was tough because corporate sponsorships weren't so normal, especially in punk rock in 1996, 95, 96. It was kind of grew up with that on skateboards that said, fuck corporate America. That was the saying. But where I had seen it, I started to look at it and say, wait, we're supporting these companies. We're buying their products. Maybe we should get some of their money. And I know that Walter and Paul, Walter Schoenfeld, Paul's partner, wasn't really happy when I say, my job was to come get some of your money to have a good time with my friends, But that's how simple it was at that point. But in 1990, we had actually gotten Pennywise and NoFX to do Warped Tour. And I was trying to figure out how we were going to make this work. The promoters didn't want to give us any money because they were trying to make up the money they lost in 1995. And my ex-partner at the time said, I have a friend at Calvin Klein, and they would be a great sponsor. I think he might want to get involved in this. And we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this if this actually had happened.
Calvin Klein.
Yeah, Calvin Klein. So I always tell my
The Calvin Klein Warped Tour. Yeah. No.
No. So, but, you're sitting there kind of bankrupt from the year before. You're back in the clubs. Now you have two of your favorite bands willing to come out and help support you. We're not going to get paid by the promoters, but so they took the last of our money of the company at that point, flew to New York to have this meeting with Calvin Klein.
Right.
And it was a friend, a guy named Rob Tonkin, a super good friend, who was with him. And they went back and got stuck in the blizzard. If you look at the blizzard of 96, it was a major blizzard and it shut New York down. They didn't have ways to melt snow that
right.
So they actually got stuck there for a couple of days. So this meeting got delayed. And a guy who was working for me said, I have Vans wants to talk to you. I'm like, Vans?
So they approached you?
Yeah, you'd like to say that. So they said, Kevin, can you get to a meeting down here? So I said, can we do it tomorrow? And I'm like, sure. So I drove down there. They put me in a little room, and Walter Schoenfeld, who was Paul's partner, came in at the point and kind of started talking to me about amateur skating. And pretty quickly I realized that, wait, they might be interviewing me to kind of get involved with their amateur skate program.
Oh, I see.
So at this point, I had nothing to lose in life because Vans, I'm like, no one's going to see amateur skating unless you have part of my successful music project, which wasn't so successful at the moment. But I always tell people, you have nothing to lose at some point. And within 15 minutes, Walter said, we are going to come in and be your title sponsor. It was that quick. It was like...
Did you literally, though, pitch them? You convinced them nobody's going to watch your amateur skating competition unless you tie yourself to my music festival, which is badass, which wasn't really so badass.
Yeah, kind of. And so you kind of, but on the way out, Walter did look at me and say, can you take this to Europe next summer too? I want to do some shows in Europe.
And
I ran right to the post office and got an application for a passport, because you have to pick I didn't even have a passport. I'm like, sure, I know how to do that. And it was really cool to reconnect with Steve. We knew Steve from these events we'd been doing in the snow.
Right.
But so to wrap this part of it up was how we got involved was they got stuck in New York. I had this lawyer.
I think it's a damn shame that Calvino de Klein did not sign on to the
And
Warped
I wish
Tour.
I had Fran actually had drawn a skateboard ramp that said Calvin Klein Warped Tour on it. I wish I had that. It's like potential branding mistake, like of all time. Like all time would have just been a disaster. We made this deal and it became the Vans Warped Tour in 1996. And this was a great time for Vans. They were coming out of some business reorganization situations. And, and Steve was really one of those people that believed that action sports were bigger than the coasts.
It was really 95 when you came and talked to us afterward with Walter that I've always done skating things, but not in a big scale. But we wanted to try to get to more than just Texas, Florida, and California. And your opportunity that you're going to travel to 40 or 50 locations just in the U.S., and then we were trying to get international, that there could be a piece in Europe as well as Australia and Japan. To me, it was planting seeds that are all new people. It's all music. It's all new to us. But I wanted to have skateboarding to tie in what at that time was our only roots.
So did they provide, or on that initial set, we're going to be your title sponsor, did they start introducing you to skaters that would be on the tour at that point?
Yeah, I mean, well, the first group of skaters that came out were like Steve Caballero and Mike Frazier and Andy McDonald. So they had their group of skaters.
Right.
That it's fantastic that he still supports to this day. That's one of the coolest things about Steve, how he sticks with their skaters. But it's kind of like one of those things where we look at it as, when they first came out, it was hard to say, like, okay, Vans, even though they were a good company, we all liked them, that they were going to be a title sponsor of a punk rock tour. And there was some resistance from some of the bands and things.
Really? Because they were like...
they made fun of it.
Corporate.
Like, they put Airwalk on their drum kits, one of them, But Steve kind of won them all over by a little item that he started giving away to everyone out on the road.
Music was new to me. I saw they always put their foot up on those low speakers, whatever you call those at the front of the stage.
Yeah.
And so in the first year, again, I didn't do what we did other years, is show up with 2,000 or 3,000 pair and lay them out. We just tried to get band sizes and stuff and do it that way. But afterward, it was easier to begin to lay out 2,000 or 3,000 pair and let people come pick them out and don't shove it on them. And then, but always have clean socks every day and shirts that they could get.
So yeah, it was interesting because we couldn't put later on in the tour, you would see Vans Warped Tour up on the stages and banners, but I couldn't say that band had to play under a Vans banner. So we had no branding on the stages at that point.
Right.
But Steve was smart because we all wore those big baggy skate shorts that he made socks that had Vans across the top of them.
Oh, right.
So when people put their foot up on the monitor,
you could see Vans.
Cameras were being taught. So that just, Steve's always one step ahead of you.
But that's iconic, though. I mean, that is the thing with the long shorts and seeing that Van logo on those socks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, now it's regular. You see companies with their bands.
People do that on purpose.
That was kind of like one of the first times I saw it. Like, he went and had those socks made and rushed them out to the tour to figure out how to get that branding on stage.
And the bands were so thankful just to have clean socks on the Vans.
Oh, yeah. You
tour.
didn't hear say, I'm going to give you clean underwear. Because, clean underwear, it's like, well, yeah, great. That's nice. But, socks are going to get a little bit of that brand exposure coming up. And then Steve was one of those people with kind of...
As opposed to Calvino the Klein underwear.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it could have worked. They would have pulled their underwear high.
Yeah, the boxer
stood
shorts.
on the mic with a Calvino the Klein.
Yeah, so, let's and nothing against Calvin Klein, but that would have not worked out.
Not so cool.
But, but that's really kind of like how I, really connected with Steve. And a lot of people really don't know that post that first year, it was really a 1-year deal. And I was hoping that they would come back and be involved with me. And a person from a rival shoe company came to me and said, look, I'll give you $1 million to become your title sponsor.
Wow.
But you have to kick back $100,000 to me.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay, so this is the dirt I'm talking about. Explain this. Let's be very clear. Someone from a rival shoe company offered to take the tour after the first year, give you $1 million, and said, "Here you go, $1 million, but you got to cut me a check for $100,000."
Yeah. So while they were on their payroll,
that's no bueno,
and
dude.
That's
against the law.
And I was like, it was no question. It was like, one, that's wrong. Like it's
you
wrong.
Go to jail.
And two, Steve Van Doren. Like watching Steve.
Wow.
At that point, I was getting an education from Steve. I was learning marketing and branding. He didn't realize I was watching a lot of things he was doing.
So I'm assuming that this other company and this person it's all going to be nameless.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just leave them out. But it's good.
Oh my God.
You know the basics of the story. But it really kind of, just that whole thing because, it was about a lot with Steve and his family and things.
Well, yeah, he took a chance on you that first year, and that's a big deal.
And then, it was like little things he would do throughout the tour that were super, super cool. Like he'd identify little moments. Like it was my job to identify moments when we maybe needed a barbecue or a party or something like that.
Sure.
He identified special locations to do special things.
Anytime we're in Boston, the man loves to get lobsters for everybody on tour. So I've literally been with him where we get 125 lobsters live in a bedroom because we'll usually go out ahead of time. And then we bring them back to tour and Shelly would cook them up for everybody. And then we do waffles on a stick like in Ventura or somewhere else. And what can we say? We're Italian. We're Van Dorens. We love food.
Yeah, we pivoted that to lobster tails. And then I would grill him because he would show up with those tubs. Do you remember a certain lobster he brought one time?
Yeah, the big one for Fletcher, right? Didn't they name it?
We always have to have a Fletcher story in every episode. So they showed up with this giant lobster. It was like about 13 pounds.
About as big as Fletcher.
And he had a dog tag made that said Fletcher. And so Fletcher, we talk about his big heart and everything. So he literally took the lobster. He couldn't eat it. It was like, no, I can't eat this. So he took the lobster with him on his tour bus. And the lobster lived with him on the tour bus for a while. This was
How?
days.
Did he keep it in a fish tank or something?
It was in a box. It was in a box with kind of seaweed around it.
Tortured this
the lobsters
poor
live
lobster.
Pretty good out of water. This one was but he wanted to let it go. But we're heading south. So you're up in Maine, Boston, water's cold. I think
it's cold and it's fresh water, isn't it?
No, it's salt water. But I think he let it go when we got to the southeast somewhere where the water was 20 degrees warmer. So if there's a bunch of freaky lobsters living off North Carolina
that's
coast.
Really cool though. The lobster lived. This is a happy story.
Well, if you release something into the wrong environment, sometimes
it's a happy story. The lobster lived.
Yeah,
that's
so
what I'm
if you're
going
seeing
with.
freaky lobsters somewhere in the southeast that are supposed to be living in Boston, you know
job,
where they come
Fletcher.
from. Invasive species. It was one of those things. But it was great because I did get to catch up with a gentleman, Bob Provost, who is a very interesting guy who has worked with Steve for many, many years. And he had a pretty cool little story about working with him.
The show that you led every day, to have it all come together in just a few hours and then start letting people in. Unbelievable. And you can learn from that. And I've learned from that because I told myself, if I can do this for 2 months, I can pretty much do anything. Rain, lower the tents.
Yeah.
Thunderstorms coming through. I'm hanging on to a tent for dear life. And I'm going, well, I'm going to be Mary Poppins here pretty soon,
On the entire encompassing portion of the tour, they were with you. They were on the road. They did the whole thing.
For many, many years, Steve came on to every show. And, he did have some health issues at one point. And they started to restrict the amount of travel he can do.
Mm-hmm.
But he would still be out, and Bob would be out, and his team would be out. And it was really very, very interesting because it goes all the way back to the original motivation and the original theory of Paul Van Doren. And he talked a lot about, getting your hands dirty. And he had a little clip. I had a lucky to speak to him about this.
Kristy is the only person that I know that actually could do what Stevie does. She is, from the time she was 9 years old with her dad, she's one tough customer, but she's a fantastic people person. She knows the difference between what you should say and what you shouldn't, what you should do and what you shouldn't do. And that's when you look at bands, it's just a people whole organization. And people count for everything. It's on the Warped Tour was one of those things that not many people could stomach.
They surely couldn't go out and run or work there.
No, we have a saying, we've had it for years. We look at people who get their hands dirty. Not everybody gets their hands dirty.
Kristy could.
The higher up the ladder you go, the less people get their hands dirty.
Wow, that's great. I mean, the insight from the guy who started it
Yeah,
all,
it was pretty
right?
cool though. And he went on, he loved horses all his life and everything. And I did try to ask him to give us a tip on the Kentucky Derby coming up in a little short period. He just didn't want to release the information.
Well, he's really proud of his granddaughter and stating, that to make it, to get gritty. And especially if you're going to sponsor something like the Warped Tour, you definitely have to get your hands dirty.
He came out to one of the dates, and one of the questions I asked him was some of your favorite bands playing. And we got a little laugh out of that during our discussion today. But I think really the kind of thread of this is a lot about Steve's just kind of philosophy to life, about, what a big heart Steve has. Like that guy, he's everywhere. And one of the things he's really taught me is you may have a lot of acquaintances in the world. You're going to know a lot of people, but you start to hold your friends very close.
Right.
And that's one of the things Steve has really done, whether it's been skaters or someone who's coming up in this next little interview. We're talking about the coach.
Coach was just a football coach. And he happened to live on the same street as my brother-in-law. That's how I met him. But I'd go to his games every week. Wherever I was traveling in the world, I got back Friday night so I could see his games at Diamond Bar first for the first 20 years. And he worked with teenagers, and he had a certain way with them. And he got more out of them than anybody in the world. And they believed in it, and they were winners. And I always loved being around winners, around successful things. And he didn't matter. He was just a rough, gruff coach. But he basically had a good religious foundation. He had a good family, and he had a good ethic. I mean, nobody else, none of my other friends ever went on the tour as much as him. He just got older and older and stuff, but he was there for the fight, There was a funny story where Katy Perry was on the first year, and she was on like the third stage or fourth stage, and Coach's satellite was over there. And every time she played, they'd overrun his tent. Who is this girl? He tells a story today, about Katy Perry. I just get run over. Yeah. And it happened to be the day there. And then we went to Montreal the next day, and he put his thing by a fountain. They ran out of water, and everybody overran him with the water. And then the next day we were at Buffalo, and the fire department came out with the big hoses, and they were shooting the hose in the air to cool the kids down. And the hose lands right on his tent. So he had like 3 rough days in a row. But it's people like, Pete's been with me like 19 years, Bob 42 years. He started the very first mall store.
So this coach also worked at Vans and then went on tour.
No, he was a football coach on his own.
What was he doing at the tour? What was he doing?
He would bring his friends. It's like my friends come out on the bus. We're going.
But he would work the tent and hang out with Katy Perry.
It wasn't like my friends. You'd be like, oh, I'm hanging out. Oh, where's more beer in the ice chest?
No, they're working for him.
So wake up. I'd have friends that would wake up and doors are open. Like, they've slept like through doors, Steve's friends would come out, and you would see him out there, and it doesn't matter. You're there. You're part of the team. You're part of the crew. You're working. And these people would sit in their booth for like 9 hours and just hawk and sell Vans, like promoting Vans. And, it was there. But, business was a lot for Steve, and there's always the business side. But there's this philanthropic side that, some people that he doesn't really highlight, that probably should be highlighted a little more. about all the volunteering and different things they do.
Well, we never had much as a family, as a company and stuff. And, I just know that we got some breaks over the years in order to survive going through Chapter 11 in the early days when the first company started out. And, with the new companies that have bought us, like VF and stuff, they have never said no. If they did, I'd be really upset. But I just basically, when something happens, like if it was Katrina, let's say, 11 years ago, or if it happens to be over in Houston 4 or 5 years ago with Sandy and stuff, fires up north, I just automatically, I'm not asking for permission. I'm just grabbing trucks. And I learned from the first time when I went out to Katrina, I only had like 3,000 pairs because I just took one truck. Now I take 2 trucks in the motorhome and get 6,000 pairs and shirts and clothing and socks. And just people want to reach out and they want to help. A rep calls up and says, pick me up in Phoenix as your way, because I just posted a picture of we're on our way to Houston. The people in Houston helped out the people from New Orleans so much. When Houston went down, I had to go help. And the first one we ever went to was Katrina and me. It was me and Coach just driving for 2.5 days to get there. And when we got there, we go and talk to the people from FEMA and the people from Red Cross, and they says to me at the first stop, "Oh, we don't need shoes." And I see all these used shoes on blankets and stuff. I'm going, "We're a shoe company. We want to help out." "No, we don't need it." So the ladies in the schools that helped line these up, they lined up like 7 stops. They were there and they were so upset. They got on the phones. Within a half hour, we had 5 schools lined up. We went from there to the schools and started handing out. And you could just see the people, how they wanted to help. When you entrust other people and they see, we don't go and put publicity up after. That's the worst thing you can do. We just do it from the heart. And I've met so many great people over the years. When the pandemic happened, from all those other years of going to fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, I reached out to them and says, "You know what? I can't do anything really. I have to be home. I can't travel, but we'd like to give out some shoes during the first month the pandemic started to helpers, volunteers." So I called Eric from Party Works, and he gave me a lady's name of a food bank up along the 210 freeway. And she lined me up with 3 locations. And then I reached out to all our district managers across the country and our salespeople. Find out somebody, fire department, whatever, volunteers. We want to give the shoes to volunteers because they're volunteering their time besides going out with the chance they might get COVID. So we went through like 27,000 pair. We had either a 50 pair, 100 pair, 150 pair lot. And then I ran across the LA food bank and we brought 1,000 pair there. But it's just a matter of just, I call it just heart share. And, normally, just as I grew up, you do 10 good things for somebody and, you're going to get rewarded just somehow, some way, somehow, on the backside. My dad always said, for your people that work for you, you help them 9 times, but let them help you once. They want to get, they want to give back to you for what you've done for them. That's always worked out really well for me.
And Tony, that's for me, it's interesting because, Vans has been purchased by a big company. And sometimes when you're become a part of a big machine, there becomes layers of administration. You deal with a lot of big companies and things. There's a lot of bureaucracy sometimes. So I'm really happy that, the VF Corporation recognized that Steve is going to, is a person of action. Like by the time you would get the request up the chain, he's like driven from here and he's in Houston. If he goes out and does things and then they kind of figure it out. And I'm really glad he's
but they didn't stop him. So, he gave away a lot of shoes. When you look at that just for COVID, and when you think about it, there's so many people out of work. Stupid little things like that help families to get shoes for their kids or whatever. But another thing he had mentioned was when the acquisition happened, they didn't really stop him from doing stuff, including sponsoring your concert tour.
Yeah, and I think some of their officials came out before and kind of looked at it and go, "Whoa, the liability here might be a little steep for this."
You would think the first thing that would come
everyone made sure the insurance was really buttoned up at that point.
Pants on.
They were looking at the insurance very closely.
But he's got some nice shoes.
But what that isn't true though. It's just you don't realize that on a tour like ours, just having dry after stormy, working in the wet mud and cold, your feet after a couple days. Feet start to get pretty gross. And
sure.
Steve would recognize that, like, and bring out shoes and socks. After a week of storms, we'd have new socks and shoes for everyone. But just giving a person a nice pair of socks, some socks and some shoes if their house has been ruined by, a flood
Or whatever.
or
That's
the soot
huge.
in a fire
Yeah.
if you've been walking in ashes. We always realized, and it was like, going back to when I was at the fair, having a new pair of kicks going to school. I know we didn't have a ton of money, and my mom and dad, now that I look back, were really trying to make it all work.
Mhm.
But it felt good having that new pair of Vans. Even
Sure.
if they might have been different colors and different sizes on each foot, but it didn't matter. They were new shoes. And, it was cool. So, during the pandemic, Steve was like, can't get in his van and go. They put some restrictions. Like, you can't,
You can't do this
you
anymore.
can't do this face-to-face stuff. So this is where they came up with this really amazing program that, has been going on, and it's pretty awesome.
Back in April, May, June, we did Foot the Bill, where we reached out mostly to core skate surf companies that were not open and they're dying. They have to pay their rent. Their employees are off. So we came up with Foot the Bill and let them make up to 500 pairs if that's what they could do. And then eventually that helped them out. We paid probably almost $1 million to small account people. 80 at first, we added 40 more. So a month ago now, we started to do it again, and we wanted to help out Black-owned businesses in February, women-owned businesses in March. And both me and Kristy, it just happened that Kristy reached out to an old friend, Shelly, who was Tada Catering, who did our catering for almost all the 25 years. And there's no concerts. There's no venues open. She hasn't been able to do anything. So we reached out to her because they opened it up for about 200. They got about 200 responses back from companies. We just said, hey, who needs some help? Write us, send us a video. And so 200 people did. Well, in the meantime, Kristy reached out and said, hey, we know of somebody. It's a women-owned business. We've worked with her for years and years. She helped so many people. And in the music industry, which, with between the Vans Warped Tour and now anything that we do in music, she knows a lot of people, and they probably like to help her, and this is an easy way. So she gives a graphic, we design a shoe. She gives a graphic, we design a T-shirt. She does a video, we put it up, and then everybody can go on and you buy a shoe. Then more than half of the proceeds goes right back to her.
Well, that's really great. And then the other thing, if I get that right, to help out local skate shops and stuff like
skate
that.
shops.
He gave them inventory for free for them to sell and pay back if they could during COVID to get them
Well,
through.
what they do is they just pay the cost of the shoe, the hard shop cost of the shoe,
I
and they get
mean,
the markup for them. So,
That's
if you're
great.
interested in these shoes, I was thinking, as a shoe collector, not that I am, but if you were a shoe collector, you could get these limited edition Vans that are only going to be run right now. You can go to vans.com and look for Foot the Bill. And of course, helping Shelly Lynn out, who we featured
Right,
in a
Shelley's
past episode, but giving her own shoe really kind of showed how they value families and everything. And, Bob had some really great ways of summing up how it all kind of sums up who this Steve and his family are.
I just had a conversation with him this morning, and it wasn't even about work. It was just, how is his day going? How is his dad feeling? I've always felt part, and they've always made me feel part of their family. We don't go out to a lot of dinners with the family or anything like that, but I've known them, it's just, they're part of my experience in life, and they've been part of my experience in life. They've given me the opportunity to be the few and the proud that's only had to go to high school and maybe 1 year at JC. And that was it for me. So as far as the education goes, and I've learned from them so many different things. Every time we go somewhere, and we could be anywhere, somebody knows him. So, you're traveling with a celebrity that's not like a Hollywood celebrity, but he's a celebrity into himself. We were at Triple Crown of skateboarding in Cleveland, Ohio, and we had to find a market to get some more hot dogs and buns. Well, we went looking around, and you have to go out of city downtown because it was downtown. And we went to this supermarket in an area where people, don't have lots of money. And we were filling up the cart with dogs, hamburgers, and stuff. It looked like we were coming in and just, buying everything. The world's going to end tomorrow. And somebody knew him there. Somebody says, "Oh, Mr. Van Doren, how are you today?" I'm saying, all places we go to, we could be at the ends of the world and somebody will know. Musicians, he totally respected and enjoyed as much as our own athletes or athletes from another brand, or he's just an all-around people person. We love Beebs and her moneymakers. And she still keeps in contact with myself and Steve, and she's doing a great job out there. I follow her on Instagram. But I mean, all the bands, all the people that always came to our merchandise tents and stuff at the Warped Tour, they were always welcome with open arms. If they needed anything, he was always there to give them a hand with things. And we've always learned, even with people ourselves, as you had mentioned, that, people have hiccups and stuff, and people sometimes make mistakes, but that's why we're human. And we all are here to give people a second chance.
I think that's one of the things, you look at in, it's how do you nurture so many relationships? It's you're traveling all the time, and Steve is that kind of person that's within minutes. He you can't remember everyone you meet, but within a very quickly, he will give you that feeling that he values you as a person, though he may not remember your name. And that's been a really hard part I've learned in life, because we do value all these people that allowed us to do what we did. But remembering names, you're going through these cities and as fast as we do that, it's sometimes it takes you a minute to relate the actual name of the person, but you know who they are by face, especially if you're in the same parking lot or building or something. And you really do value that as an important part of your life, that these people allow you to do what you do.
So him and my mom just celebrated their 45th anniversary last week. And that's tremendous. I think a lot of friends that I grew up with in Corona, they go on big cruises like every 10 years, like to kind of celebrate. They went around to Australia, or he likes vacations. He only does cruises because his phone doesn't work. So if you want to catch him, like, that's why he loved your Warped Tour cruises, because it was just like, that's like his wheelhouse of relaxation. But he does care about people. Like, he's not full of it. Like, you meet him and he'll be like, "Do you want a hot dog? Let's hang out and relax and have some fun." Like the Nicholsons, like, how long have we known them for? Or his best friend Coach, he's known him since I was 2 years old. He's like a second dad to me. Or Bob, I've known Bob since I was a little girl as well. I know guys will get to talk to him. I mean, like us, like, we don't get to see each other very often, but when we do, it's quality time. And he really does care about a lot of people.
We talk a lot about that, but of course you go back to Mr. Paul Van Doren a lot, and he just has a simple way of summing things up.
And he just from the very beginning wanted to do what his dad did. And as time progressed, of course, Pomona Fair was his doing and turned it into the biggest thing. The Warped Tour with you guys, that was an incredible situation. But anything Stevie did worked. He's just he's a great people person. And, my philosophy is that people is everything. If you got the right people, you can do anything. If you got the wrong people, you can't do anything.
No truer words have ever been said. Do you take, I mean, for you to say it yourself, but do you take any stock in the fact that had you not come up with this festival and got it started and had that situation with Calvin Klein not signing, and then do you think Vans, the brand itself, whether it was acquired by anyone or not, would be anywhere near its iconic status as a brand today without those 25 years on tour with Warped?
I think we were a good piece of the puzzle. I
think you're a huge piece of the puzzle.
We were a piece of the puzzle, but you really look at that, and I was lucky to get to do what we do. So, that we were, I think, a piece of their puzzle. They went through some business times. We were their kind of big project coming back. They took full advantage of being involved in that and embracing the music scene the way they did. And that really, as I always says, it kind of goes back to, Steve, just like, you could have had a sponsor out there that put their name up on stuff and never shows up.
No, he was hanging out.
He was hanging out. He
With
was
Coach.
embracing everyone.
And Katy Perry.
Katy Perry, Coach. It's like, you got these guys rolling around. It was kind of cool because, as you was getting older, they brought the demo up a little bit. When you had the average age of Warped Tour was 19, there was a couple people. Actually, I could talk to a couple people, go out and talk about more things that were starting to relate to my life, like raising children and that. Then when I started on tour, it was a different point in my life. And I found myself gravitating to some of the people, Steve. I kind of built up more of a friendship with those people later on because we could actually talk about things that...
Because they weren't 19, 18 years
19,
old.
It was fun to do the tour
Not that
with
there's
them.
anything wrong with that.
No, but, it wasn't there, But, right now, I wonder if he's ready to get back out on the road.
My wife's ready for me to get back out there and stuff, too. I just can't wait till they can say I can go to Arizona or Texas or Florida and jump in the motorhome and just get out of California. And my wife showed me absolutely. Also international. I really enjoy international, but I always take, all of our athletes with me whenever I go anywhere. I don't want to just go anywhere. I want to bring them and share them with everybody. Go to the factories. We were supposed to be a year ago. Right now, we're supposed to be in our Vietnam factory, which is the biggest factory. They have 15,000 employees. I made 15,000 hats so we could hand out that day. They're still there. So I've got to get back over there so we can meet and thank them for great jobs that they do. I did Cambodia about 3 years ago. It was remarkable.
What must be driving him nuts? I mean, it's like it's driving all of us nuts. I can't wait to get out and be able to travel. He must be cooped up and not be able to much.
Steve is one of those people, like we all led this life that took us on the road a lot and traveling a lot, but man, Steve is a person where it's like, where's Steve now? And even though, he's got to be cautious of his health,
Right.
He's out there. It's like, where did Steve go now? Oh, he's out doing that. Oh, he just organized a cruise for a month with all his friends, and it's like he's on the go. So, relationships have had, a lot of people in our industry have kind of struggled during this time because you get this balance of being home and not home.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you kind of make it all work. And then all of a sudden you're putting in a thing, which was one of the reasons this podcast, while you're sitting with me, of course, we talk about, because Fran's like, you are driving me, no, this is nuts. Like you have to go find...
Get out of the house!
Go do something, go do something with your friend that we could do socially distance. And, so we started this podcast and it's been a lot of fun. And for me, getting a chance to sit there and talk to Kristy about their work habits, to get to talk about all this. But really what this leads to is getting a chance to talk to people like Paul Van Doren. We're not on this earth forever. So when I get a chance to talk to people like that you looked up to in life, I always looked up to their family, the legacies. And I talk about legacies, and this is truly a legacy family in my 40 years of my now almost 60 years of life, Tony.
Take it easy.
By the time this airs, it'll be 60 years of life. They've been a
Happy
huge,
birthday, Kevin!
When they move through this. But the really cool thing is, and one of the big things we want to talk about is this this book and why it was put together. But before, Kristy really wanted to sum up her concept of family.
No. He was always, you know what? I'm an only child, but I have lots of brothers. I have an amazing group of between athletes and musicians that watched over me. I couldn't have thanked anybody enough. Like, just so you guys know, like, I literally was embraced with a huge family, and it was amazing.
That's cool.
And it is. And one of those things was that they never give up on people that they believe in. And, I was reading the book. I've got a pre-copy. This book will be available on April 27th.
It's called Authentic, just like our original shoe, Authentic by Paul Van Doren. So it says Authentic Paul Van Doren. It's got a checkerboard shoe on it. And it says the memoirs of the founder of Vans. And so the pre-sales are on Amazon, and they're going to be in every Barnes & Noble store out there and stuff. They're giving him his own little table and stuff. That'll be coming out on April 27th.
So I'm just going to read a few quotes about, Paul is an inspiration. He's proof of the American dream, a mentor and fearless leader. And last but not least, the father we all love and respect. That's from Tony Alva.
Oh, wow.
You go down, Steve Caballero. Paul created a brand that has lasted decades because of integrity, devotion, passion, and trust. when I say trust, I mean that he believed in the people who helped shape and grow the company. Creativity has the ability to grow when you just give it the freedom to breathe. Steve Caballero. And sadly, Jeff Raleigh, who we just lost recently, has one. Paul Van Doren, the #1 supporter of skateboard footwear since 1966. The American dream personified, the original. And rest in peace, Jeff Raleigh. We just lost you, and you were such a big part of the skate community. Yeah. And I thought this last was Steve from Stacy Peralta, who actually produced the No Room for Rockstars movie that I was lucky when I got a chance to work with him because of Vans on that movie.
Right.
It was really cool. Paul is a true visionary in the world of athletic shoes. He saw very early on, before anyone else, that the youth culture of the world was beginning to turn away from traditional sports like football and baseball towards more solo sports like skateboarding, surfing, BMX, and snowboarding. He saw it and embraced it before anyone else. He won the race wearing the shoes he invented. Pretty cool. And, I know that, that some of the people that they embraced early on had troubles in lives.
Right.
And you know what? They didn't give up on them. When they sorted themselves out, if they decided to kind of turn over a new leaf in life or something, Vans was there for them. And with that,
in some respects, to be honest, that same philosophy that family has, they applied that towards you, Kevin. They didn't give up on you and your music festival, and they stuck with you even through acquisitions and changes they had to fight for you. And I think that's a testament of that relationship that you had with them.
It was a great run with Vans, but that run with Steve Van Doren never ends. Me and him talk on a weekly basis. We constantly text because both our fathers are right about the same age. Right. We keep in touch on things. I'm sure we'll be doing more things in the future. We bounce ideas off of each other. And it was really a pleasure having you as part of this today, Tony, just because to learn the legacy of a family like the Van Dorens.
It's very cool.
So remember, if you want to read a really cool book, it's coming out on April 27th. So,
and then is it true that they're Corona family from Corona?
Yeah, they came from Corona. Yeah.
And that's where they started all this?
That area.
Isn't that where Fender has a facility
they're
too?
They're based down there too. So, Corona is a place. that you don't just drive through on the 10.
Usually it is just a place I just drive through.
It's so authentic. The Paul Van Doren, a memoir of the founder of Vans. We always like to celebrate a charity, but, this week we're just going to talk about Foot the Bill again. It's been helping independent business owners, independent people like Shelly Lynn and Tada Catering. So check it out at Vans.com, Foot the Bill. They keep putting more shoes up. So if you're a collector, I'd get one pair each, and you know how it resells later on in life.
Absolutely.
From what I just said.
And I would like everybody to wish Kevin Lyman a very, very happy birthday. This is a big one, kids. This is a big one.
Yeah. Well, and that big one was supposed to be a party with Pepper, a reunion of the Agrolites and Hepcat all in my backyard, but which we'll have to postpone.
We're going to save it. We're going to save it. Don't worry. We're just going to turn it into a television show.
As I've said, that COVID birthdays don't count. So
That's
everyone
right.
take one off. We're
Take
just
one
going
off.
back, rewind one. You get one back. And I look forward to having that event and inviting everyone over. So if you can, please follow us on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok to get yourself an interview and be on the show. We really always enjoy your comments and suggestions. If you get a chance, please review us at an Apple Podcast. Subscribe on Patreon for full interviews, because some of these interviews are great. Some of the stuff, we talk for hours with these people. And if you really just want to dig into it, it's almost like a mini book in itself for exclusive content. Also, text us any topics you want to hear. 818-863-6445. That's 818-863-6445.
I'm so impressed, Kevin. You got through
I
that
pulled
one
it
the
off on
first time. Yeah!
Now, let's see if we could do this. I would truly like to thank you, Tony Aradia, as my co-host.
Thank you,
my
Kevin.
Producer, Xavier, taking all the equipment home. Bradley, to make sure it works next time.
Xavier, how do I look, buddy? Am I looking good?
Vivian Wang, who's always on point with telling us, say this, say that, say this over and over again.
Don't say that. Don't. Whatever Tony said, let's cut that. Can we cut that, please?
And our new set design.
Oh,
and
Fred,
you mentioned her name. I wasn't supposed to mention it, but you did, so that's okay.
We're not going to catch it on fire.
And Beata Shem Tov, who's picking it up on social media and there to help me navigate all this. And, of course, Sabrine Lyman and Sierra Lyman and Oh my God, that special guy. We're looking forward to having him playing live soon. He's going to be playing live. Diego Arratia.
Take it away, Diego!
Take it away. Bye, Diego.